Welcome to FireWatch. I'm your host, Ronald Campbell. Earlier in June of this year, the Raleigh Professional Firefighters Association hosted their Fire Ops 101 class at the Keeter Fire Training Center. Joining us today to talk about Fire Ops 101 is Association President, Captain Keith Wilder. Captain, thanks for joining us on FireWatch.
Thank you for having me back, Ron.
Okay, so before we talk about Fire Ops 101, talk to us a little bit about the association. How long has it been in existence?
We've been around since circa 1935, 36, somewhere along in there. We were formed back then. We went through a reformation around 1985, and so we've been around for quite a while.
And so you've been around for a long time, and I know a lot of folks have ideas in their head about what an association is, but the Raleigh Professional Firefighters Association is much more than your standard quote-unquote union. What are some of the things that you do in the community that most people don't realize you do?
Well, that's a good point. We produce concerts. We're the producer, and we rent the venue, we hire the artist, and we sell the tickets to the concerts. That's our revenue stream. And of course, we're a firefighter advocate group, but we do provide a lot of different funding to many different types of charitable organizations within the community here in Raleigh, as well as Wake County and in other counties. The Battered Women's Shelter is one of those. We also are a big supporter of the UNC Burn Center at Chapel Hill and their Camp Celebrate, which is the burn camp for children. And just recently, one of the most recent things we did was provide the birthday cakes for the 100-year anniversary birthday bash downtown.
So Keith, when our office gets these phone calls in about these concerts that are being put on by the Professional Association, this is a legitimate event, correct?
Absolutely legitimate.
And so you're using the funding in part to fund some of these efforts in the community for education and for other activities, correct?
Absolutely. One of the charities that I am most proud to be associated with, we got in at the ground level when this thing first took off, is the Dance Like No One's Watching Gala. And it is basically a prom or a formal night out for folks who may be cognitively or physically impaired, or someone who just felt ostracized at a younger age and just was not able or was not willing to attend a formal event such as a high school prom.
So part of the funds that you raise at this concert that you put on, you use towards events such as the Fire Ops 101.
Sure.
So that way it's at no cost to the taxpayer.
Sure.
It's completely funded by the association. And my understanding is this is the second time you've done this. Tell us about the first time you held Fire Ops 101. How did that go?
Well, the planning stages for the first time was probably the most difficult part of pulling this thing off. I started well in advance of the date. And I enlisted the help of the chief, obviously, and I needed to get his blessings to be able to do this at our training center. And then I got help from several other captains in the department, and we put together a host of events that we wanted to try to run these participants through. And then we kind of narrowed things down, and then I filled the gaps with what would we do during break times, and then some of the events that would be a little more physically stressful. We made sure we followed that up with something that was not physically stressful to give people an opportunity to wind down a little bit, get their heart rate down, and also to have plenty of time to have refreshment breaks and rehydration breaks.
Because my understanding is the day that you held this the first time, it was really, really hot. And so I think those downtime after the physical part were badly needed by the participants.
It was, but that's the way it is in real life. Firefighters don't have an option to pick the weather that they want to work in.
Well, I think that's a great example. So you did it the first time, and then you moved forward. How long ago did you do the first Fire Ops?
It was in 2010, and the entire planning phase probably took 3 months. And then it was obviously much easier this time because pretty much we no need to reinvent the wheel. All we need to do was tweak it a little bit.
So this time for Fire Ops 101 Part 2, how did you tweak it to make it different than the first time?
Well, this time the greatest change was that we added members of media, print and video, and they were a great asset to the program. They brought in their own cameras, they brought in a different perspective, they asked a lot of really great questions, and we also brought in the mayor's son as a member of our citizen group, just to have someone from the citizens of Raleigh to represent that group.
So before we talk about the actual day of and what kind of activities you did, why is it so important to the association and to the fire department as a unit that this event is held? What did you hope to to gain by holding this event?
Well, there are many people who watch TV and they think they know a lot about the fire service, but in reality they don't. Hollywood portrays us much different than how our jobs truly are, and the greatest thing we wanted to achieve here was that the policymakers, our city council members, would get a better understanding of our jobs and the department that they're responsible for funding, that they're responsible for signing off on policies for, just various things along those lines that would affect firefighters as well as the department as a whole.
Well, and then you get that side of it with the policymakers, and then by bringing in the print and video media, I guess the add there is that now you have a voice in the community who understands a little bit better about what it is firefighters have to do.
In a matter of about 30 seconds, they can reach hundreds of thousands of people, and there's no way I could possibly go out and speak to that many people to get our message out. But so many times we see people in the grocery store and they think we're there on the city's credit card, and that's just not true. You know, we pool our money together every day and decide what we're going to eat, and we pay for our own groceries. But that's just one example.
All right, so take us through the day. What time did it start? What kind of activities did you do? Just sort of walk us through what the participants did.
Well, we began with a wellness check, just the same thing that firefighters would go through at a fire. We checked vitals, and then we did a gear fitting. As you can see, we have some here on the table. And once everyone was through the wellness check and the gear fitting, we moved into an opening ceremony where the folks who had never participated before received a helmet, and we discussed the importance of the helmet and the significance of its color. From that point, we moved into our EMS portion, and that is where we really tout our ranking as one of the top places, if not the top, in the United States to survive a sudden cardiac arrest. Well, they learned some, life-saving skills, and from that point, we moved into our fire scenarios, where we taught them some basic skills that firefighters would use, like pulling hose off a truck, search and rescue, how to use our thermal image cameras, just so many little things that we take for granted as firefighters because it's just a job that we do instinctively. We taught them these skills so that at the end of the day, we could have them put those skills together in a scenario, an actual live scenario. But in the meantime, we fed everybody lunch. I think everyone really enjoyed the lunch. And we also ran them through our search maze, which was it's a trailer that is, it was actually purchased with joint funding, federal grant funding, and city funds, but it's a trailer that's designed to teach firefighters how to stay calm, how to escape in an area of diminishing clearance with no visibility. It's just a very good training tool that was used to teach them that skill. And then we also set up a live scenario of our hazmat monitoring equipment. And we also did a USAR display. The overall theme for this particular Fire Ops 101 event was more brains than brawn. I know in the first Fire Ops 101 we showed how physically demanding and how taxing it is on your body. But in this case we really wanted to demonstrate how important it is to have well-educated people in the fire service.
So of those scenarios that you just mentioned, from the search maze down to the hazmat to the USAR, which of those did you think that the participants had the most difficulty with either completing or even just getting an understanding of what it is the fire department has to do?
Obviously the search maze. Again, you're in a zero visibility environment. You never know where that wall is going to bend or make a 90-degree turn, or if the walls around you are going to start to close in. And those are real-life situations that firefighters find themselves in. Some where firefighters actually have to come out of their air pack while maintaining the seal around their face to stay on air, and then push their air pack through a hole and then crawl their body through that hole.
Did you have any of your participants just get in and be like, I can't do this? Did you have any, or did they all push through and complete?
To my knowledge, I did not hear one single comment about anyone having any issues with being too confined. I did hear a lot of comments when they came out on the other end that were like, whoo! But
they all made it through.
But they all made it through. And that's the whole point of Fire Ops 101. We want everyone to complete it. Every participant has a shepherd that is there not only to guide them through the process, but to help them with a task so that they complete the task. As I tell everyone during our little 2-hour training class that we have, this Fire Ops 101 class is more about conversation than it is about the physical activity. This is your opportunity to tell our policymakers things that you would not under normal circumstances be able to just go up to them and tell them. This is an opportunity for you to answer questions that they will have. It's more about the conversation. But once the conversation piece is addressed, then it's about making sure they complete the task. It doesn't matter how old you are or what your physical ability level is. We have that shepherd there to make positively sure that you complete the task and you complete the course.
So it sounds like that everything was kind of culminating to a final exercise. So you were kind of building to the final live scenario where you had hopefully live fire, you had some searching going on, all kinds of different activities. Tell us about that.
That's exactly right. We put our participants on engines and we allowed them to respond from just down the street. They got the full effect of pulling up to a building, seeing the smoke, seeing flames, and hearing the sirens in the background. You know, we try to get their adrenaline pumping a little bit. There are certain participants that are assigned certain tasks, and each participant has to perform that task just as we would on the fire ground. We're like a machine. Every single part is working for the final outcome. When the participants arrived, they and their shepherds immediately jumped on their task, and in the end we had victims that were rescued. We had ventilation that had been performed. We had fire that had been suppressed. We had searches on top of searches that had been completed, and we had a lot of people coming out with a different perspective of what it takes not only to be a firefighter, but what it takes to do the job of a firefighter without hesitation for fear of your own safety to save your fellow man.
So if they're going to do these live simulations, are there things that are being done to make sure that the participants are going to stay safe throughout this event?
Absolutely. Of course, as I mentioned, there's the well check at the very beginning when we get a baseline vitals. And then throughout the day, we've got paramedics that were provided by Wake County EMS. I want to give a shout out to them. Appreciate them participating. And they were there to ensure that we had a paramedic level of care on scene at all times. But then again, when you're teaching the firefighter skills, once in a while there is a mishap. And there is the opportunity where someone could have gotten hurt. Of course, we had a safe event, but we have to take into consideration that firefighting is a dangerous job. It's just inherently dangerous, and we're in the contingency business. When something goes wrong, we can't call someone else. We are the help, and we have to figure it out.
So moving forward, you've done 2 now. Do you see the association doing this in the future?
I sure hope so, Ron. As long as I am the president, as long as I have any say in what goes on, I will continue to push this as hard as I can. But I should back up and say that I'll push to get the funding for it. Obviously, it's not cheap. I think this particular class cost us somewhere around $2,500. But I'll continue to push for the funding and then push to have this class in place. Obviously, we have a chief that's very receptive. It's a win-win for everyone. And I really want to thank the participants for coming out, because if they hadn't volunteered their time, again, it was a Saturday, I had to take time away from their families and their personal lives, but if they hadn't come out, we wouldn't have a program. So it takes the money, it takes the department and association working together, but it also takes the participants agreeing to come out and participate.
Well, it sounds like it was a great event. It sounds like the participants learned a lot. It sounds like the firefighters associated with it were able to provide a lot of insight to those folks. And we appreciate you taking the time to come in and talk to us about Fire Ops 101.
Thank you for having me, Ron.
Bring out the action hero in you. Be part of the greatest action movie ever. Show us how you train and eat like an action hero. Join in at actionheroalliance.com.
Welcome back to FireWatch. One of the participants at this year's Fire Ops 101 was our own Mayor Nancy McFarland. Joining me today to talk about her experiences is Nancy McFarland. Mayor, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for asking. Great.
Okay, so before we talk about your time with the Fire Ops class, you were a council member for several years in Raleigh before you became mayor. How has being mayor been different than your time on the council?
You know, being on council is a great preparation for being mayor, because there's just so much to learn. You know, how the city works, getting to know all the departments, how they run, what they cover, all the people, you know, in those positions. And of course, I was a counselor for District A, so I focused on District A because that was my job to represent that district, but you still are part of making decisions for the whole city. So all of that was really good preparation. Being mayor is very different. You know, it's more responsibility, and you are really involved and responsible for the whole city. But it's, you know, I think that as mayor, you also spent, or I have spent a lot of time reaching out to other municipalities around us and really looking at us as a region. Because we have 12 municipalities in Wake County, and then you think of us in Research Triangle Park and Durham and Chapel Hill. I mean, it really is, especially economically, you know, things affect us as a region. So you just have a broader scope as mayor.
Now, I also know that being a mayor is a part-time job here in Raleigh. It's not your full-time job. You're a small business owner also. How do you balance the time with being mayor with also running your business? I'm assuming that's got to be difficult.
I have really good managers, really good, and that's true. And also, you know, being on the council was a good step. I talked to everybody at work. I started the business in 2002. And when I decided to run for council in 2007, we had gotten big enough that I had some managers. I wasn't doing it all. And so being on council was a good way to kind of test that out. It was for 2 years, and I could see how it was going to work, and it worked fine. And then when I thought about running for mayor, I really went back to everybody at work and said, you know, I'm thinking about doing this, and it's going to take a lot more time, and how do you feel about it? And we, you know, talked it out, and they were all very supportive, so it's been great.
Well, good. I'm glad you've had the support there so you can do your job here. It's fantastic. All right, so the Fire Ops class. Now, you did this a couple of years ago. What do you remember from your first time going through it?
Well, it was about 100 degrees that day, and I just remember just being overwhelmed with how there's no way you can explain to somebody what it's like to go into a burning building until you do it. You know, I think the first thing I thought was, now I know why they always say, you know, have a fire evacuation plan and practice it with your kids, because you think, you know, I know how to get out of my house, it's no big deal. But until you're in a room that is so full of smoke that you can't see, you know, right here, and the heat is overwhelming and you just get so disoriented, it really makes you understand just what everybody goes through.
And how challenging that environment can be. So this time, it's been a year or two since you did it last. Was this time easier, harder, or about the same? Because, you know, you've done it. Is it one of those things that once you've done it, you knew what to expect, so it was a piece of cake, or was it just as challenging this time?
It was just as challenging because, you know, even though it's a controlled fire, it's still a different situation every time you go in. And y'all had changed the experience up a little bit, which was great. I mean, I kind of knew how to do the pants and the boots and get into all the stuff, and I was more prepared for just how heavy. You know, I was shocked last time when, you know, I put the tank on and everything else, and it was time to jump out of the truck, and you know, I thought I still had myself strapped in or something, but it was, I mean, I think, what are they, 50 pounds or something?
Not quite that much, but it certainly feels that way.
Feels like it. And then, you know, I had a giant iron spike, and this time they let me do the hose, which was a different experience, but still, you know, just very, very hot.
Now, I also understand that you had a guest with you that day, that you were fortunate enough to have your son go along.
I was.
One of your sons go along with you on this. How was that, sharing that experience with one of your sons?
It was great. I really appreciate the fire department, you know, allowing him to come and letting him participate in that. They had asked us when we did it a couple years ago if we wanted to bring any family members. So I thought about that this time, and it's an invaluable experience for anyone, so I was really grateful to have him do that. And it was, you know, he had a great time. The shepherd they picked for him was young and close to his age, and so he really enjoyed it. And he learned to do CPR, which I said, well, that's good, because, you know, I might he might be around one day and I need that. But I will tell you that the most kind of moving part of that was I was in the first floor, as I said, with a hose in the back room trying to put out the fire. And he was on the team that went upstairs and tried to find the victim and drag them out, and that's what I had done last year. And I was with the hose putting the fire out, and my shepherd said something to me about, do you want your son to do such and such? And it just made me really think, you know, being around firefighters, it's just such a different, it's not a job, it's a calling, you know, and you really do treat each other and feel like family. You just pick that up immediately when you're with you. And I thought, you know, this is how you all feel every day. You know, I think that really is, you know, you have your job to do, but in the back of your mind, your family's in that building too. And so you're really looking out for each other. And so I think that, you know, having my son there and then having him say that really brought that together for me.
Well, it sounds like, though, it was a really valuable experience for both you and for your son. When you got home that evening, was there any kind of a discussion at the dinner table about, Mom, why did you take me, what did you drag me into?
Oh,
or
he was so thrilled to have done it. I mean, he was just, that was awesome. You know, that was awesome. And he really, really did like it. I think he wore the hat for a while. But no, I mean, he really appreciated it and realized just how fortunate he was to be able to do that. And so he really does thank you all for letting him come do it.
Well, I'm sure it was no problem. You know, and now that you're back in the mayor's office, you're out of that environment, how does that experience help frame what you see the fire department fitting into the general plan for Raleigh and what you see Raleigh becoming?
Well, you know, when we were out there, we did learn so much about what everybody in the fire department does besides just going to a residential house and put out fires. I mean, the training stuff that you have out there, it's like the collapsed bridge, and it's got cars in it and refrigerators, and you have to learn how to tunnel through it, and all of the urban search and rescue, and then you have all the hazmat stuff. I mean, it's like everybody knows the firefighters show up when there's a disaster, but you don't think about all the training that you have to go through. You have that thing where you have a huge piece of concrete that you have to move all around an obstacle course and over things with, you know, like crowbars, and I mean, it's just amazing. But until you really see it in that context, I think it really makes me understand, you know, not only how valuable you are, but, you know, we're growing and we're getting, you know, high-rise buildings, and we have, you know, a lot of research labs here, and we have a lot of very complicated things. And as the region continues to grow, and especially in a lot of the different fields that we're getting more and more involved in, you know, a lot of energy and things like that, you know, it's going to be a much bigger education job for you all to learn to handle all those things. And also, you know, the fact that you're a resource for most of the state. I mean, that's also just, we were looking at the maps and how much you all cover with especially hazmat and search and rescue. It's really incredible. So it gives us a greater understanding of how much you all do. And
what a role that we do play in just not just the safety and protection of our citizens, but just in the general health of our city, and just how we make our city a more vibrant and a better place to live. Well, it sounds like you had a great time. It sounds like your son had a great time. And we certainly appreciate you taking the time to join us to tell us about your experiences.
Sure, I'm happy to. In fact, I tell everybody about it. And right next, you mentioned my work, and right next to my office is a fire station. And right after I came back the first time, and it was that hot last summer, or whatever, that hot summer, every time that bell would go off, I would think, oh man, they got to put this closed back. I mean, I just knew, especially if it went off 4 times in a day and it was 100 degrees, and I would think, I hope it's an easy day and it's not too bad and they can come back and get out of this hot clothes. But, you know, yeah, it really does give you a different outlook on it.
Well, thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Thanks for everything you do. Appreciate it.
Welcome back to Firewatch. Summertime brings with it family, friends, and fun. But along with those get-togethers comes an increased risk of fire. In fact, in the months of May, June, July, and August, they account for 57% of all grill fires. So as we get together with our families, we thought we'd take a little bit of time here and look at grill safety. First of all, we're going to take a look at propane grills. When you first use your propane grill, before you ever fire it up, you want to make sure that there's nothing inside on the grill itself, that a wasp hadn't gotten in there and built a nest, or even that a bird, surprisingly, would have built a nest in there. You want to make sure that it's clean in there, and before you use it, you want to take a good grill brush and scrape away any residue. It's also a good idea when you first use your grill to clean it real good with soap and water to get off any built up grease or anything that might be on there from previous uses. Once you've established that it's clean in there, then it's time to light it. You're probably going to first have to turn on the gas, because if you've stored it properly, you've turned the gas off after you used it last time. So you'll turn the gas on, and then you'll come over to the lighters and light it safely. You'll follow the manufacturer's directions and do as it says to do to light the grill. Check to make sure that it's lit. And then you can close the lid to allow it to start to heat up. Just like when you're cooking in your kitchen, it's important to stay with the grill while you're cooking. And you want to make sure that you use long-handled kitchen implements that'll keep you a good safe distance away from the grill while you're using it. When you're finished using your grill for the day, before you push it back up against the side of your house or anything that might be combustible, you want to make sure that it's cool to the touch. You don't want to push it back up against the house if it might char the siding or even possibly melt vinyl siding. A lot of us choose to use charcoal grills, and they too can be used safely as long as you follow a few basic safety rules with those. When you're using a charcoal grill, it's important to use a charcoal lighting chimney like this. You put the charcoal in it, then you can put some type of starter at the bottom. And if you're going to use a lighter fluid, make sure you only use an approved charcoal lighter fluid. You don't want to put any other type of flammable or combustible liquid on your charcoal to start it. And once the charcoal is lit, you don't want to add any more to it. Once you get the charcoal going, it's going to burn for a few minutes, and then you'll probably want to use some type of a oven mitt to pour the charcoal into the grill itself. And just like with the gas grill, you want to make sure that the grill is clean so when you're using it, it doesn't flare up any more than it needs to. Just like when you're using the gas grill, you want to make sure that you stay outside with the charcoal grill while you're using it. And also with the charcoal grill, before you push it back up against the house, you want to make sure that it's cool to the touch. It's also a good idea to check the charcoal to make sure that it's cold and that it's out. You don't want to leave any type of ember still glowing and go to bed. That could lead to a potential problem. It's also important to remember that if you live in an apartment, it is a fire code violation to store or use a propane grill on your balcony or deck. And it's a fire code violation to use a charcoal grill on your balcony or deck. We just discourage you from using that. Remember, if you follow these few basic safety procedures, you too can enjoy your grill all summer long.